Good morning. Welcome to Brunch with Brian, your home investing live stream. I missed you on Friday. Hopefully you were with us on Friday at our incredible Taking Action workshop. Now, if you missed that, I can't believe it. I can't believe you missed it. So go watch it. We still have it up. There is a link to it, and we decided to keep it up for a little bit more time. So if you want to go up there, there's a link to the YouTube on our Facebook page, and you can go on to YouTube too, I think. So go check it out. That was our incredible Taking Action workshop where we enabled you guys empowered you to get the tools and everything you need to succeed in this business. In home investing, I love home investing, and I love doing the things. Today we're going to talk about stats. What are the stats of the business? What are the, a lot of times you can tell a lot about a business, obviously, by looking at the numbers. And a business like ours is all about production and deals and how many deals you're doing. So what are the numbers? What are the stats? How does it break down to figure this out? So let's take a quick look at that. So what stats? What's the first stat that I always think of? The whole business is kind of centered around this closing call. It's really amazing how the closing call is the linchpin of this creative financing world and the creative financing business. You got to get on the phone with the seller and explain and ask if they're willing to possibly take monthly payments. So that's kind of where it all starts. And so you need to talk to these customers. How many closing calls do you do in a month? So that's probably the biggest stat that makes the biggest impact on your business. And that is a number. That is a number that you can write down and look at. Okay, so that's probably the most important number in your business. So what was that number for this month? What was it so far? How many actual sellers did you talk to and who had a house for sale, and you said, would you consider monthly payments? Some version of that. Okay, so that's how many closing calls you did. And you don't need some big, long, drawn-out 10-minute call to get on the phone with somebody and say, you have a house for sale, I'm interested in buying your house. And then you're going to warm them up and say some other stuff in there. But basically, you're going to say, would you be open to monthly payments? Would you consider monthly payments? And if they are open to it, and if they don't give you a hard no, basically, that's something I want you to be thinking about a deal meeting. If you don't get a hard no, we would never do that. We need all of our money, blah, blah, blah. Unless you get a hard no, you should be thinking appointment. You should be thinking, I'm going to get out to this house. All right, so how many closing calls have you made so far this month? Be honest. That's the one thing about stats and numbers is you just can't lie. I mean, if you start lying and fudging your numbers, then you can't get an accurate anything. So you got to be accurate with your numbers. You got to figure out, okay, how many closing calls? Now, what's prior to that? Closing calls is such of a linchpin that I like to start with that number. And how many should that be? It depends on how many deals you want to do. But it should be at least 20 to 50. And honestly, guys, 20 is pretty conservative because the closing call can be a 1-minute affair. If you get on the phone with someone quickly and they're just bum rushing you off, it might be quick. So you got to make 20 of those in a month. That's less than one a day. So I think probably we should be looking at the higher end of that 20 to 50. And maybe even, especially if you have an acquisitionist, we should be looking at 100, or more. Plus now, listen, the big evolution of the real estate investing, creative financing business has been the ability to do deals at a distance. We have a lot of students. We have one student, that's all she does. I mean, she's just advertising all over. She's, just blasting stuff out there. Stuff's coming back, and she's closing deals all over. So, deals at a distance sort of opens up your market. So if you think, well, I could never even talk to 20 sellers in my market because there's not that many houses for sale. Supply and demand has been an issue, admittedly, but when the whole world is opened up, that enables you to have a lot more potential leads. So plus you got to do some kind of marketing. So the marketing leads to the closing calls. So what are your stats with marketing? Well, if you're doing a yellow letter campaign, for instance, or some kind of a direct mail campaign, you should be aware of exactly how many pieces went out, how many people called, how many people actually had a house for sale, how many closing calls, how many deal meetings, and how many deals. Obviously, when you do a big letter campaign or direct mail campaign, you want to at least get one deal to pay for the campaign. And, obviously pay for the campaign 100 times over. So that's where you look at, okay, I sent out 500 yellow letters. I got, 38 calls or whatever it was. And, 10 of them didn't have a house for sale or whatever the story is. So check your numbers, especially in marketing. Marketing is probably the most important place to keep track of your stats, because marketing is all about trial and error. And if you're not keeping track of your stats, then you have no idea what's working. Well, if you got a deal doing it or not, but there's a lot deeper look at the stats than that. So anytime you do any kind of marketing, especially if you spend money, remember, we have that program, free social media marketing for free leads. I want you to track your numbers there too, but it doesn't cost you anything. So I want you to put out a bunch of emails and contacts into different groups and different people, talk to people, and see what comes back and kind of track the numbers. So if you're doing posts, how many people see your posts? How many people respond to your post? Can you message those people and say, hey, do you have a house for sale? Because that's the next step. That's the next step everybody forgets. You can have people following you and commenting on you and stuff, but the key is you going back and following up with them and asking them if they know anybody with a house to sell or anybody looking to buy. And that's the key. That's the conversion point. That's another important stat, guys, is conversion ratio. So let's say you're doing 20 to 50 calls in a month. Let's say you do 50 calls in a month. How many appointments did you get? Okay, so you're doing 50 closing calls. The next step to a closing call is a deal meeting. Could even be a virtual deal meeting, but that means touring the house, and showing them the paperwork and saying, here's the deal, and hopefully they sign. Okay, so how many deals do you get out of that 50 calls? So a good conversion ratio would be what? 10% would be a very good conversion ratio. So what's 10% though? So if you talked 10% of what? So if you talked to 50 people and got, I'd like probably your conversion ratio on deal meetings to maybe be a little bit higher. But here's the key, write this down. It depends on the quality of the lead. Your conversion ratio is heavily dependent on the quality of the lead. That means, where did that lead come from? If you're just calling somebody off Zillow like everybody else, that's going to be not the highest quality lead. If this person saw a sign of yours, or they answered some social media post, you responded to some social media post, that's a lot better ad. That's a lot better lead. That's a lot warmer lead. Your conversion ratio is going to skyrocket compared to just stuff you're calling off of Zillow. So that's why I want you to be marketing and being out there on social media. Let people know what you do. Let your friends and people know what you do. It's amazing how many times I ask students where they get a deal, and they say, well, my cousin knew this guy and he told him I did this. Okay, so much of it is just letting everybody in your social circles know what you do. And so let's say you get 50 leads. Let's say you convert 10% to deal meetings out of 50 closing calls. That would be a very good, I'd be very happy with that. If you did 50 closing calls and got 5 legitimate deal meetings where you were filling out paperwork and you were going to present paperwork, that's a legitimate deal meeting. Okay. Now people ask, what's a closing call? A closing call is you getting on the phone with a seller with a house for sale and saying, would you take monthly payments in some way? So what's a deal meeting? You either virtually, over the phone, over a video chat, or at the person's house, touring the house, looking at the property, and putting the completed paperwork in front of them, trying to work out the 4 terms, purchase price, monthly payment, length of term, and down payment, and get it all written up and signed. Okay, that's a deal meeting. And you don't always have a successful deal meeting. It's still a deal meeting if they don't sign, but it's not a deal meeting if you don't at least show them the paperwork and say, here's where you sign. Remember, you say, and here's where you okay the agreement. That's the key 7 words. If you've never heard me say that, you should really write that down and circle it about 10 times, because that's exactly what you say when you get to where they sign, and here's where you okay the agreement. All right, so lots of stats there. Again, it starts with your marketing. And what's your conversion ratio with your marketing? How many closing calls does it get you? Like if you do, yellow letters or a letter campaign is the easiest thing to sort of quantify in terms of numbers. So if you send out 500 yellow letters, I was saying you get 38 calls. Let's say you get 50 calls. Make it really easy. So 500 letters, you get 50 calls. So what's your conversion ratio on just getting callbacks? It's 10%. So out of all the letters you sent, you got 10% response. Now, you got to look deep into that response. Out of those 50, how many were actual sellers with a house to sell? Maybe only 20. So really, you only had a 20 responses out of 500. So it's not 10%, it's 4%. So out of those 20 responses, how many, so you make 20 closing calls, I'm assuming, if you find out it's a real seller, you're making that closing call. So you're doing 20 closing calls. Now, how many of those lead to deal meetings? It'd be nice if you would get, out of those 20, if you'd get at least 2 to 4 deal meetings. So let's say you only get 2. So that means your conversion ratio on your closing calls to deal meetings would be 10%. You had 20 closing calls, 2 deal meetings. That's not a terrible conversion ratio, actually. If you did 10 closing calls and got 2 deal meetings, 20 closing calls, if for every 10 closing calls you made, you got 1 appointment, I'd be okay with that. Depending on your marketing now. If these are people calling you off social media, off your posts, I would want you to have 3 out of 10 probably. I mean, those are lot warmer leads, so that's a different category. But, if you took all of it overall, if you had, if that was your stats, if you had 10% conversion of closing calls to deal meetings, that's probably okay. Now, after your deal meetings, now what's your conversion ratio at the deal meetings? I'd really like it to be, now listen to me carefully, I'd like it to be 50% at least, okay? Now, maybe you can get it up higher than that, depending on how much you got worked out on the closing call. Remember, this is kind of a balancing act. How far do you push the closing call? Like if they say, if they say, well, I really need a little something down. Well, how much? Well, I need 10,000. Well, I don't want to do that. So you don't have it written in the contract. Okay, so you got to go out there and still sort of figure stuff out. Sometimes if you go out there and they worked out everything and you worked out everything, or your acquisitionist worked out everything on the closing call, you've got a complete contract with all the 4 Pretty House deal points filled in. Okay, your conversion ratio better be high on that. But if you're going out there with only the purchase price and the term, or maybe only the purchase price and nothing down figured out, you still got to figure out the length of the term and the monthly payment, whatever. That's a little bit, you still got stuff to figure out, so your conversion ratio is not going to be as high. But if you could, every time you go out to a house or do a virtual deal meeting, if you could get half of those, that would be good. And if you don't get, if you get more than that, if you're getting like 100% of the time you get a deal meeting, you're getting it, you're not probably setting up enough deal meetings, because you're not setting up those kind of middle ones where this is going to be a hard one to get. But that's the ones I want you to get out to the house and get, try to get them. All right. And maybe if you know it's kind of a shaky deal when you're going out there and there's stuff that may be kind of big stumbling blocks, at least make sure that they said, yes, they will do monthly payments. They'll consider monthly payments. If they don't say that, don't go out there, because it's a waste of time. Unless you're doing an option deal, that's obviously different. If you're doing a straight option or a wholesale deal, that's different. All right, so that was a lot of stats. So, let's take a deep breath and just process that. Okay, nice deep breath in. Okay, always have a big smile on your face. Hi, baby. Come here. You want to do deep breathing? He's noisy. Another deep breath in. Hold a little bit, big smile. Let it go, relax your shoulders. Okay, another deep breath in. Are you taking a deep breath? And let it out. Let it all go, relax yourself. Okay, you're gonna have a great day. Let's do our affirmation. I'm gonna have a great Monday. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna have a great Monday. Okay, I love Mondays. Ready, 1, 2, 3. I love Mondays. All right, that's good. See, now even if you don't anytime you say I hate Mondays, oops, I shouldn't even have said those words. Now we have to say I love Mondays again. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I love Mondays. Yes. Okay, so go out there and take a lot of action today, guys. Look at your stats. Think about what I talked about this morning, about your numbers. And if your numbers are not where I'm talking about, then, you have to make some smart adjustments like we always talk about at our Taking Action workshop. All right, so guys, as I said before, you can still check out that Taking Action workshop. go back in our Facebook stream and click on the link, or go on our YouTube channel. And then we're going to just have a great week this week. Awesome Teaching Tuesdays coming up tomorrow. Great Thursdays live. And we're all going to have a great week. Guys, we're a third of the way. The stat that made me start thinking about this is that we're about a third of the way through summer. So now is the time to kick it in the butt. So take a lot of action today, and keep us abreast on what you're doing. I want to know what you guys are doing out there. It makes me happy when I see you guys taking a lot of action. Got some great testimonials actually in the last week or so. So send us a testimonial of your deal that you're getting done. All right, so guys, until I see you next, keep expecting success, getting awesome training, and taking action. Yay! Yay!